The Ground War. Desert Storm, the Ground War. Sub to the channel if you like them. No content, Steel Arena.
Late on the 23rd of February 1991, 10 Special Forces reconnaissance teams of the US 3rd and 5th Special Forces Groups crossed the border into Iraq by helicopter. They are to join Green Beret, Delta Force and British SAS operatives already in Iraq.
God damn.
In just a few hours' time, the ground invasion to liberate Kuwait will begin, and these invisible eyes in the desert will report on Iraqi division movements.
Liberate Kuwait.
Operation Desert Storm has been ongoing for 5 weeks. A 35-nation-strong coalition formed...
So this is after 5 weeks of 2,500 bombing runs a day.
...as a response to the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, has been engaged in a massive bombing campaign against Saddam Hussein's Iraq. With an average of 2,500 bombing sorties per day, the command and control structures and logistics lines to Saddam's army in the east have been severely degraded. More recently, the bombing has shifted towards Iraqi troops themselves, aiming to soften them up and weaken their resolve to fight such a superior enemy. Coalition Navy ships have also blasted Iraqi positions near the Kuwaiti coast with naval gunfire. President George H.W. Bush issues a final ultimatum to Saddam Hussein: leave Kuwait by 8 PM on the 23rd of February, or face a ground invasion. Like
he probably should have done that, probably.
The ultimatum preceding the air campaign, this is no bluff, and G-Day, the beginning of the ground invasion, is scheduled to begin at 4 AM on the 24th. General Norman Schwarzkopf, Commander-in-Chief of Coalition Forces, arrives at Central Command in Riyadh.
Checking his own pulse for some reason.
Coalition forces are split into 5 corps along the front line. On the west flank, 18 Airborne Corps, made up of 4 divisions. The French Daguet, a light armoured division of tanks, recon and armoured infantry, including 2 regiments of the prestigious and recently battle-experienced French Foreign Legion. The infamous US 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. The 82nd will support the French Daguet as motorised infantry. The 16,000 paratroopers of the 101st will ride into battle with 350 helicopters.
Jesus Christ.
The 24th Infantry Division and 3rd Armoured Cavalry Regiment, bringing a combined 333 Bradley infantry fighting vehicles and 333 Abrams main battle tanks. The 2 formations bring an armoured capability to 18 corps. 7 corps, in the centre, are the heavy armoured fist of the coalition. The US 1st and 3rd Armoured Divisions and the British 1st Armoured Division are the centrepiece of the battering ram, using Abrams and Challenger tanks. Supplementing the 3 Armoured Divisions are the US 1st...
You see, Operation Desert Storm was actually just the rumbling. The mangaka for Attack on Titan copied it. We just lined a bunch of Abrams up, like, hole to hole, and just rolled forward, and just reduced all of Iraq to dust underneath the treads.
1st Cavalry and 1st Infantry
Divisions, didn't even fire.
And the 2nd Armoured Cavalry Regiment, with further Abrams and Bradleys, helicopter, engineering and artillery support. 1st Infantry, known as the Big Red One, were the first wave to attack Omaha Beach on D-Day in 1944. 7 Corps will roll across the border with 1,487 main battle tanks, 1,384 infantry fighting vehicles, 242 attack helicopters, and 146,000 troops. East of 7 Corps, on the border with Kuwait, is Joint Forces Command North, made up of divisions of Egyptian, Saudi, Kuwaiti and Syrian armour. Marine Central Command comprises the US 1st and 2nd Marine Divisions, armed with the older M60 tanks and a brigade from the 2nd Armoured Division. The east flank is another joint command of mechanised Arab forces from Saudi Arabia, Oman,
our great allies, our warriors in the battle for democracy, the Saudis, arm in arm for freedom.
UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Morocco and Senegal. With the Iraqi Air Force neutralised, overwhelming air power can be brought to bear with many hundreds of coalition strike and close air support aircraft, ready to react at a moment's notice. Coalition ground forces number nearly 700,000. The Iraqi military can't boast such firepower. Of the approximately 350,000 Iraqi troops in the region, it is estimated that 140,000 have already deserted, with another 26,000 killed in the ferocious and unhindered bombing leading up to G-Day. The 700,000 coalition troops, with modern tanks and air power, will face roughly
What was so funny? 700,000 soldiers. Not to mention backed up by 5 weeks of intensive bombing and like the largest assembled coalition armored military force, like, ever. Jesus.
180,000 Iraqis, armed with tanks that mostly date from pre-1980 and with no air power. Even
To
the
be fair, nobody could have stopped that. That's correct. Desert Storm, Iraq never had a chance. Nobody could have stopped this.
most modern T-72 tanks have an effective range of just over half that of the Abrams and Challenger tanks they'll be matched against. Saddam has positioned his weakest divisions on the border. His elite Republican Guard divisions are positioned further north, with the Tawakalna division the nearest on the Iraq-Kuwait border. If they're to liberate Kuwait, coalition armor will have to face the Republican Guard in the desert. The coalition war plan is as follows. At 4 AM on the 24th of February, G-Day, the left and right flanks will advance into enemy territory. On the right flank, Marine Central Command and Joint Forces Command East will carefully carve entry paths through the dense mine.
My dad did describe the sheer overwhelming display of force in the land invasion. Yeah, this is literally the shock and awe doctrine. American military doctrine, because we tend to fight numerically and technologically inferior opponents, is to massively overwhelm them with way too, because we have a lot of equipment, we have a lot of money, so deploy 10 times as much equipment and as many people as you need, and just overwhelm them. Get it done with as quickly as possible to minimize the damage done to our own forces, and realistically also to theirs. Another benefit of the shock and awe doctrine is that it causes enemy soldiers to desert, and it does make the fighting last less long. Apparently over 150 people, or 150,000 people on the Iraqi side already deserted by this point. And that's part of the idea. Yeah, it's a very basic doctrine. It's been done like throughout all of human history. Like, charge with massive forces to break their lines. Like, do it as quick as you can. Mop up afterwards, yeah. This is a very effective doctrine. It does not tell you how to occupy a country full of insurgents for 20 years, though. That's the problem. Very effective at one thing, but that one thing that it's effective at is not the thing we've been doing lately. And it's very ineffective at handling what we have been dealing with.
Fields on the Kuwaiti border and engage the enemy beyond. On the left, the Mobile 18 Corps will blitz north. The 101st Airborne will perform a massive helicopter assault to capture an area 155 miles behind enemy lines, named Objective Cobra, hold it, and build a forward operating base, potentially under fire. Meanwhile, the rest of 18 Corps will advance north by land. The French and 82nd Airborne will capture Objective Rochambeau, another supply route near As Salman, and then As Salman Crossroads and Airfield, so that ground supply trucks can reach the 101st further north. On G+1, the Armoured Fist of 7 Corps will advance across the Saddam line and move north. On G+2, on reaching Al Basaya, 7 Corps will wheel right into Kuwait, where they'll face the Republican Guard en masse. The Arab forces on the right flank will have the honour of liberating Kuwait City. At 5:30 AM on the 24th of February, the US Marines on the right flank advance across the border. They're immediately met with Iraqi artillery fire. Because they don't have any forward observers or helicopter support, the shells are being fired wildly at the American line, and no hits are scored. To cover their advance, Marine artillery returns fire with 140 artillery pieces.
What the fuck? Dude!
Met with Iraqi artillery fire. Because they don't have any forward observers or helicopter support, the shells are being fired wildly at the American line, and no hits are scored. To cover their advance, Marine artillery returns fire with 140 artillery pieces and 9 multiple launch rocket artillery systems.
Yeah, returned fire by simply projecting a wall of lead a kilometer wide forward at them.
Pairs of Marine jets bomb the enemy positions every 7.5 minutes. A deadly display of superior firepower pounds the Iraqi positions, and they very soon crumble for no US loss. In just 30 minutes, the Marines cover the 12 miles to the edge of the first minefield in Kuwait. 500 engineers will clear 6 individual tank-width lanes across the minefield. 3 M60 tanks fitted with specialist mine-clearing equipment known as combat engineer vehicles and a Mark 154 mine clearance launcher move to the head of each prospective lane. The Mark 154 launches 3 cables laced with explosive 35 yards into the minefield. The explosive cables are then detonated, thereby detonating any mines beneath to carve a line through the field. After each detonation, the 3 combat engineer vehicles use ploughs and rakes to clear and smooth the route. Within 45 minutes, the first lane will open. Expecting an Iraqi counterattack within hours.
That is fucking insane. The idea that there are whole minefields that within an hour we can clear, we can clear paths large enough for tank lines to fit through safely and efficiently is insane. That is absolutely insane.
None materializes, and Marines and tanks start to stream through the lanes as they open. Meanwhile, on the left flank, 18 Corps have no minefield to contend with and advance into Iraq. The French Daguet are the first across with a brigade from 82nd Airborne. They encounter only sporadic enemy artillery fire from scattered elements of the Iraqi 45th Infantry Division, who are dispersed thinly over a wide area to defend the western flank. Coalition artillery returns fire. The American paratroopers transmit a message to their French colleagues. Side by side, French and American soldiers will write a page in history. They roll north slowly and carefully to minimize casualties. To their east, the first wave of 106 helicopters...
I will say that, as I understand, and I'm certainly no expert, while Operation Desert Storm was 100% like Western hegemony, keep the oil prices down, yeehaw, yeehaw, I'm not denying that. I will say that as long as an invasion is happening anyway, I think this shock and awe doctrine generally leads to fewer casualties overall. Because the idea is that if you send fewer troops and you let the fighting drag out, not only do you take casualties, but you give the enemy the impression that there's value in fighting, which encourages them to keep fighting. The idea is you break them so quickly and so like overwhelmingly that you only have to do the fighting for a couple of days or weeks at most, and then after that, it's like most of them are just fucking fleeing to the mountains, which means they get to live. You know, it's kind of like I guess it's kind of like if you're like getting in a bar fight with somebody and there's like a bunch of dudes and you're like a super cool martial arts badass guy, it might be better to just like break one of their arms right away and hope the rest of them like fuck off than trying to draw it out into some kind of like back and forth escalating violence thing where they just continuously get more and more hurt, you know? I don't know if I'm explaining it very well. Yeah. Is that what Putin tried? It is what Putin tried, but it doesn't work with Russian army because they're weak and we're strong. If the strategy, but you can see right now, right? The casualties in the Ukrainian war are mounting up massively because the combat is protracted, you know? If the fighting had literally been over in 3 days as they'd taken Kyiv, and that had been it, that would have been the fewest casualties. Obviously, I don't support the Ukrainian war in any fashion, so I'm glad that Ukraine's been given the chance to fight back, but if your goal is to minimize losses, and that's it, I do think that just being super overwhelming and decisive tends to reduce casualties.
Of the 101st Airborne, known as the Screaming Eagles, sweep over the border just 10 feet from the ground. They follow a trail of radio beacons dropped by a pair of Apaches and Blackhawks during the night. The two Apaches wait for them at the objective area and engage Iraqi anti-air forces nearby. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Cody is commanding the pair, the same pilot who commanded the flight of Apaches that attacked the radar sites on day 1 of the air war. He was also one of the first to cross the border during the ground invasion. Before cautiously moving forward, the area in front of the French advance is blasted by artillery and airstrikes. Kiowas and French Gazelles attack enemy vehicles ahead of the front line and also guide in A-10 strikes. This Vietnam-like tactic is repeated with each advance. And
isn't that the logic a lot of tankies tried to use with Ukraine? Yes, but they did the descriptive, prescriptive thing. Even if you acknowledge that a decisive, quick attack to break morale and overcome them and win might lead to fewer casualties, that doesn't mean the other side should just surrender. Like, just because trying to break them quickly and being over with it tends to end the conflict quickly, does not mean the other side should just give in or whatever. That's ridiculous.
So progress is not the blitz-like speed that Schwarzkopf was hoping for. A nasty sandstorm and rain slows progress further. Almost immediately after engagement, encountered Iraqi forces begin to surrender. These are Saddam's weakest divisions. They're malnourished and not interested in fighting. Processing 2,000 surrendered troops slows progress even further. The French and American force continues to crawl forward. The first of the Screaming Eagles disembark from their helicopters a mile south of Objective Cobra at 8 AM. They roll 105mm howitzers.
Also, it's worth pointing out that the Russian army never even got close to establishing the shock and awe doctrine. They couldn't even establish air superiority. We had air superiority over Iraq like 8 seconds after we arrived. We every single fight between us and the Iraqi forces was so unfairly and unreasonably skewed in our favor that it was a joke. Like Russia never even got close to being able to deploy that doctrine in Ukraine. They pretended they could by marching 1,000 tanks over to Kiev, and then all of them ran out of fuel and just fucking collapsed on the road because they were taking single lane roads in occupied territory where all you had to do was blow up the front and the back vehicle and then kill everyone in between, and none of them could move or do anything, you know? Like, okay.
Out the back of the Chinooks and immediately start lobbing artillery shells at the defenders. F-16s and A-10s arrive overhead to help the Apaches hammer enemy bunkers, tanks, and vehicles. Under relentless
Russia
aerial
has the
bombardment,
Suka and
300
Bleh
Iraqis surrendered
doctrine.
just 1 hour after the first boots landed. Wave after wave of helicopters stream into Objective Cobra over the next few hours, bringing more troops, artillery, Humvees armed with wire-guided anti-tank weapons, enormous underslung rubber sacks containing a total of 1 million gallons of fuel, food, water, and ammunition. The Humvees set up a defensive perimeter while the base is constructed. To the south, the French and 82nd arrive at the area of land known as Objective Rochambeau, at midday having met almost no opposition, but sporadic artillery and mortar fire en route. French helicopters move in from the west and destroy 12 bunkers, 1 tank, 5 armoured personnel carriers, and 8 trucks. Another pounding by artillery precedes the armoured assault.
How evil were the Iraqis in this war? Well, I don't like saying the Iraqis, because, like, they had a dictatorship. Saddam Hussein is a really bad guy. Super bad dude. There are bad dudes all over the world, though. The reason we invaded had to do with, like, maintaining Western control over, I think, like, the production of oil, you know? I don't think anyone in the region wanted Saddam Hussein just, like, getting to fucking attack people over, like, you know, oil production or, like, dropping oil price, whatever. Like, I think it was in our interest to keep him from being a bad dude over there, like, in an economic sense. So we invaded for that reason. Saddam's a pretty bad dude, though. Yeah. Kill and torture political dissidents, would use chemical weapons on his own people. Kurdish genocide. He's not good. It's not good.
Assault on the objective, provoking another mass surrender by the defending Iraqi troops without engagement. The time is 2:30 p.m, and the French and Americans have moved into Iraq and taken their first objective, overwhelming all opposition immediately, accepting 3,500 surrenders and losing only 2 soldiers. Schwarzkopf is unhappy that this walkover wasn't performed fast enough, and demands that the advance on As Salman is sped up.
What are we, Germans? No, do it again and better. What the fuck? Oh, sorry, we just vaporized their armored fortification in like 45 minutes instead of 40. My bad, you know, we'll do it all over again.
It's a similar situation on the right flank. M60 tanks and Marines are now through the first and second layer of minefields. Artillery continues to batter enemy positions, including aircraft-directed counterfire against enemy artillery pieces. A captured Iraqi colonel describes the dispositions of his remaining forces. The minefield itself claims 9 tanks, but no Marines killed. On the left flank, a convoy of Marine vehicles is attacked from behind by M60 tanks in a friendly fire incident. With 55 rounds fired, 2 trucks and an assault vehicle are destroyed, killing 1 Marine. A strange case of luck that the tank gunnery was so poor in this case. To the east of the Marines, the Arab forces of Joint Forces Command East are also through both minefields, and have also met little opposition and mass surrenders. The Iraqi forces in this area are of similarly poor quality to those facing 18 Corps, made up mostly of enforced conscripts who don't want to be there, especially given that they've been thrown into such a hopeless situation.
We need a downfall-style movie about Saddam Hussein. Do we have that? You know, like 999. Like, we need that, except with Saddam Hussein, I think.
Against such a superior enemy. The ease and speed of the Marines' advance presents a problem for Schwarzkopf. Even before midday on G-Day, he estimates that his right flank is 8 hours ahead of schedule. The Egyptians of Joint Forces Command North on the Marines' left, and the armour of 7 Corps further west, are not scheduled to cross.
Yeah, Saddam Hussein has about 250,000 arbitrary killings given to him. Which probably isn't good.
Across the border until the next day, G+1. However, the speed and depth of the Marines' advance has left their left flank vulnerable to attack, or worse envelopment, by Iraqi armoured divisions just west of them. Schwarzkopf makes the bold decision to move the central assault forward to today at 3 PM, just 2 hours away and 15 hours ahead of schedule. British 1st Armoured Division rushes to join the rest.
I'm so sorry. I'm just reading the wiki page right now. Okay, after Desert Storm, well, of course we liquidated their military, obviously. As part of the ceasefire agreement, which we forced on them, Iraq agreed to scrap all poison gas and germ weapons and allowed UN inspectors to inspect the sites. UN trade sanctions would remain in effect until Iraq complied with all terms. Saddam Hussein publicly claimed victory at the end of the war. Unbelievable. We should have hanged him a decade early, I think. Jesus Christ. The smug bastard. Look at this smug piece of shit. Fucking guy. You run it back just for the audacity, exactly. He was handsome when he was younger. That's the case for a lot of dictators, yeah. How can a country defend itself against such an onslaught? You can't. Fairness has nothing to do with it. If the United States leads a coalition army to take you down, that's it. It's like at that point, like the best thing you can do, like realistically, the best thing that you can do, is like negotiate the terms of your loss. You know, that's it, right? Like that's a pragmatic way of thinking about it. You know, the only way you can meaningfully beat back an empire like America is through insurgency, but that's not the same as maintaining a state army and presence. That's a different thing. Yeah. Yes, the insurgency route is like the long-term strat, you know. Does anyone know why we didn't kill Saddam before? Did we not kill Saddam after Desert Storm just because we didn't want to destabilize the region further than we already had? Like we thought by leaving him alive, he would just like we'd spank him and then he'd like be a good boy or something? Saddam routinely cited his survival as proof that Iraq had in fact won the war against the United States. This message earned Saddam a great deal of popularity in many sectors of the Arab world. Dude. I mean, I think the fact that we let him live is a pretty good indication that we weren't there to really save the Kuwait people, right? Like, we were just there to establish our interests. Because if this had anything to do with protecting, like, minorities in the region, this guy's like a mass-murdering, genocidal dictator. Probably would have taken care of him, too, you know? Why'd we just... I'm really asking, why'd we... The U.S. government also feared an occupation could splinter their coalition. If U.S. hegemony has taught me anything, it's that destroying a country is easy, and, like, changing a country is hard, you know? Like, destroying a country is just a matter of physics, you know? A certain amount of lead and explosive material will do the job anywhere on Earth. Changing something about a country is unimaginably difficult, which is why sociology is the hardest of the hard sciences. Yeah.
Of 7 Corps on the front line from their staging area 60 miles behind the line. The last-minute time change carries logistical risks, but the enemy is weaker than anticipated, and the advantage needs pressing. Scout helicopters begin to move into enemy territory to spot Iraqi units. Across the front line from 7 Corps, 2 brigades of the Iraqi 26th Infantry
Sociology is not a hard science. I know, I was joking.
Division have set up defensive positions in the shape of a triangle, looking down a slope towards the line, with mortars and towed artillery to the rear. Similarly entrenched, the 31st, 46th and 48th Infantry Divisions lie in wait northeast of them. They occupy a system of defensive fortifications, trenches, bunkers, minefields and barbed wire known as the Saddam Line. At 2:30 PM, 30 minutes before the breach is to begin, the most ferocious artillery barrage in recent history is unleashed against Iraqi positions.
Jesus Christ.
13 artillery battalions fire 11,000 rounds. Multiple launch rocket systems also open fire, launching rockets that travel to and dispense 650 bomblets over the target area. 10 batteries devastate the Iraqi lines with 650,000 bomblets. The bombardment lasts until 3 PM, and 7 Corps crosses the line into enemy territory. The 334 Abrams...
Do you have any idea how confident you have to be to maintain an artillery barrage for only 30 minutes and then move in? They said they assembled at 2:30, and then at 3 they moved in. Artillery barrages tend to last for a really long time to soften an enemy position. We had so many artillery units that we just, after 30 minutes of hitting them, were like, okay, we're ready, and moved in. This is still day one.
And 224 Bradleys of the first bombardment lasts until 3 PM, and 1,000 bomblets that travel to 13 artillery battalions fire 11,000 rounds. Multiple launch rocket systems also open fire, launching rockets that travel to and dispense 650 bomblets over the target area. 10 batteries devastate the Iraqi lines with 650,000 bomblets. The bombardment lasts until 3 PM, and 7 Corps crosses the line into enemy territory. The 334 Abrams and 224 Bradleys of the 1st Infantry Division are the first to engage, firing fearsome volleys of rounds into the Iraqi trenches and bunker positions.
That has been true since World War I. Modern doctrine since World War II has been short bombardments followed by assault to prevent revealing where exactly you intend to breach defenses. Okay, I guess that makes sense. I still feel like 30 minutes is a really fucking short bombardment time, though.
For the first time, the defenders don't surrender and return fire with tanks, artillery, anti-tank guns, small arms, and RPGs, albeit disorganized and inaccurate. 2nd Armoured Cavalry lead the left flank's advance and meet similar resistance deeper in Iraq.
Can you imagine being this guy right here? I know this is just like a simplified representation, but this guy right here was a real guy. Like, there was the front tank in the assault on the fortification, you know? But just like, just absolutely blasting Unfortunate Son at like 140 decibels. While the 4 guys in you who are all drunk and high as shit are overdriving directly towards the Iraqi fortification. Yeah, sorry, Unfortunate Son's Vietnam. Yeah, what would it be? Iron Maiden? Yeah.
Fire. Combat engineers hastily clear lanes across the thin minefield, and vehicles of the 1st Infantry move across.
Some guy wearing like a Bart Simpson t-shirt, like Don't Have a Cowman, with the world's worst haircut that you've ever seen smeared against the inside of his dusty helmet. Just on speed, reloading the shells from inside and vaporizing positions. Oh, God. Yeah, the fucking mullet, yeah.
On reaching the Iraqi trenches, the Bradley infantry fighting vehicles don't dismount their infantry to clear them. Instead, armoured bulldozers turn left and right and move up the edge of the trenches, using ploughs to push the piled up sand and dirt back into the trenches, filling them in. This tactic is controversial, because 150 Iraqis who don't surrender are buried alive.
That's not good.
By sunset, the 1st Infantry have broken through the Saddam line.
I'm glad he mentioned that.
In multiple places, capturing 550 troops for only 2 casualties. With safe lanes marked through the line, the armoured divisions begin to move up to the front, ready to begin their mighty punch into Iraq and Kuwait. While Schwarzkopf is happy with the almost unbelievable lack of casualties sustained on day 1, he is unhappy with the slow speed with which the French have advanced in the west, and 7 Corps in the centre. The rain and sandstorms have certainly slowed progress, but the common theme across the whole front is that the weak and unmotivated conscript divisions on the front line are surrendering in such high numbers that it is taking time to process them. But the invasion as a whole is still...
it's an Iraqi tactic. You see, they will simply, by surrendering hundreds of thousands of troops, the sentimental and naive Westerners will take so long processing the surrendered troops that we won't have time to move in. Yeah, I mean, honest to God, if you're an Iraqi soldier during Desert Storm, surrendering to the onslaught of armored vehicles moving towards you probably will slow them down more than you fire at them. If you fire at them, they just turn their turrets towards you and reduce you to a pink mist smeared across the stand. If you surrender to them, then there's like their guns have to be taken from you, and you have to be like brought back to like the logistics lines behind you and so on. The whole process.
Hours ahead of schedule, and most importantly, many of the coalition's armoured divisions will be across or crossing the minefields and the Saddam line during the morning of day 2. The ground war of Desert Storm
Pink
has
mist?
got off to
Like
a near
blood.
perfect start, but in Day 2, the coalition will face motivated and armoured Iraqi opposition, including
Fuck, I'm actually so gripped by this. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm not sorry at all, actually. I don't even care a little bit if you don't like it.
This video is sponsored by Conflict of Nations, a free
I
online
bet.
player versus player strategy game where you can lead your nation in a modern-day global conflict. Set in the present day, research and make best use of over 100 cutting-edge weapons and vehicles to fight with up to 64 real players at a time.
Oh, shit! It's a stylized depiction of what's happening to Florida right now.
In exciting real-time combat. Platform. The offer is room in Riyadh. General Norman Schwarzkopf returns to the War Room in Riyadh at 4 AM on Monday the 25th of February 1991, G+1, after a few hours sleep. He observes the large war map.
Oh, just remember, by the way, this is a fact of all military history, like in the past 100 years, okay? During big days like this, everyone is on cocaine. The soldiers, probably on cocaine. The officers, 100% on cocaine. 100%. There is no reason for them to be sleeping.
Showing the live dispositions of his forces.
Or meth.
Nearly all Iraqi divisions on the
Sorry,
front
I
line,
take that back. It's meth for the soldiers and cocaine for the officers. My bad.
mostly made up of conscripts, have been annihilated. The 240 Abrams tanks of the 24th Infantry.
Where'd they get it from? Amphetamines were actually literally a part of soldiers' rations. I think up through... Wait, how recently did they stop doing that? Did they stop in World War II, or did it keep going into the Korean War? That stopped during World War II? 70s? You know what? Personal opinion, I think they still do it. My dad bought them off in the 70s, yeah. These vids are amazing, but you're adding very little and you're just stealing content. Please watch this video in your own time. I'll mail him a check.
Division of 18 Corps have marauded across the border and aggressively penetrated 80 miles into Iraq. After slow progress securing objective Rochambeau on day 1, the French Daguet is preparing to launch its assault on their objective at As Salman Crossroads and Airfield. After their daring helicopter assault behind enemy lines on day 1, the legendary and respected...
Pilots still take modafinil currently now? That makes sense. I mean, the beginning of this this campaign, the beginning of Desert Storm was like a 36-hour bombing run, right? Yeah. Prescription needed. What is the active ingredient in modafinil? It prevents sleep apnea. I don't know.
(101st Airborne) have progressed the construction of their forward operating base at Objective Cobra and prepare to launch a new advance to take and cut off Highway 8 in the Euphrates Valley. Highway 8 is not only Saddam Hussein's main supply line to his forces in Kuwait.
Dude, we're in like the fucking Euphrates. We're in like the bedrock of civilization right now. That is insane. It's just wild, right? Like, I mean, how far back can you go and find writings on the Euphrates? You know what I mean? It's like it's the fucking cradle of humanity here, and we're like doing tank battles over it.
So controlling the road will allow the 101st to destroy any Iraqi military vehicles in retreat. The US Marines and Arab forces in the east continue their excellent progress towards Kuwait City. Marine helicopters perform mock attack runs towards the coastline at Faylaka Island. This is a feint, and gives a portion of Iraqi troops the false impression that an amphibious assault could be incoming, keeping some of their attention focused in the wrong direction. As well as the liberation of Kuwait...
Dude, it's literally like checking you or whatever, like fly at them really fast, then turn away, you know? Like when you like run at a person like, and then you like turn away, you know? Actual feint.
The other coalition war goal is to destroy the Iraqi Republican Guard, neutralizing it as a potent force for years to come. For this reason, the heavy armoured divisions of 7 Corps need to be making fast progress north to cut off any divisions that try to escape Kuwait. The difference in progress between the left and right flanks and 7 Corps in the centre is vast. Furious, Schwarzkopf demands to know why they're so slow. In reality, the 24th Infantry Division of 18 Corps has met minimal resistance in their march northwards, whereas 7 Corps had to breach the defences of the Saddam line. The logistical pressure placed on 7 Corps by moving the main assault forward by 15 hours on day 1 has been significant, and so logistical chains can't reasonably be expected to be at full efficiency. Some in Schwarzkopf's circle of staff officers believe that he knows more than he lets on, and is simply exaggerating for effect to light a fire under his generals. The first action of day 2 takes place on the western flank of 7 Corps.
That's the classic, like, cunty military officer move, right? Like the, I need this done 5 hours ago type thing. Like, oh, you didn't move your, like, mechanized brigade, like, 500 miles in one day while also obliterating, like, these 3 armies you came across on the way? What are you, fucking gay? What are you, gay? Are you gay?
The 1st and 3rd Armoured Divisions are manoeuvring across the desert to catch up with the 2nd Armoured Cavalry Regiment already in Iraq. They hope to reach the supply depot at
Got distracted by guys' buttholes over there? What are you doing?
1st Armoured's Divisional MLRS battery covers the mass of Abrams tanks as they roll forward. The conscripts of the Iraqi 806th Infantry Brigade are the unfortunate souls to be the first unit in their way. The display of firepower brought against them is short but very violent. Like the other conscripts on the front line, their resistance to the tank assault is minimal, and they surrender as soon as possible. The 1st Infantry Division advance beyond the remnants of the Saddam line to clear the area beyond of Iraqi units. Once they're happy that the area is clear, they begin to guide the British 1st Armoured Division through the breach at 10 AM. The plan is to line up the divisions of 7 and 18 Corps in an echelon right formation, stretching from the Kuwaiti border to Highway 8, and then wheel the 2 corps in a right turn to hit the Republican Guard armoured divisions en masse.
Just so you guys know, this is what it actually looked like. Like, this is what we're seeing sort of abstracted in a top-down map. Ignore the fucking music. This is literally, like...
It tanked that rise and came down on the other side. The whole enemy position really came into view. And I was up out with Sergeant rather my tank. Occurred. And if you get the jump on the...
We started after that, once we thought of that.
I don't want to see, like, in the shit shots or whatever. Just, wild.
On the 24th of February 1991, coalition forces launched a massive ground assault to destroy the Corps with organized infantry division and substantial corps formations. Coalition also contributed substantial armor support.
Oh, here's the fucking Saudi forces. Allies in democracy, right here.
US or British Army divisions. The Arab forces of the coalition also contributed substantial armor support.
Thanks.
Besides Saudi tank brigades, forces the Soviet T-55. The best Iraqi tanks, the T-72s, were used by the Republican Guard. US Army tank formations, although outnumbered, were much better equipped than their Iraqi counterparts. In the early 1980s, the M1A1 Abrams had advantages in nearly every category over its best Iraqi opponent, the T-72. It was more thickly armored. During tank-to-tank engagements, hundreds of Iraqi tanks were destroyed, while the M1A1 proved virtually indestructible. Very few M1A1 tanks were hit, and there were no fatalities as a result. The Abrams 120mm gun, combined with a more advanced fire control system, allowed it to engage and destroy Iraqi tanks at long ranges before the Iraqi tanks were effective. The British counterpart to the M1A1 Abrams was the Challenger tank. A significant role during the ground campaign. Allied tanks could fight at night or in poor weather conditions.
Yeah, the main benefit that we have is that we have sights. Like M1A1's modern tanks have like magic seeing eyeglasses that you can fucking use to see people from 1 billion miles away, even in the nighttime.
Weather conditions when the Iraqi tanks were virtually blinded.
Like that. It's so unfair. You could have the best fucking Iraqi tanker over there in the universe or whatever, and it wouldn't matter because of the equipment they're using. They can't see in the dark, and we can.
Or in poor weather conditions.
Pay to win,
when the Iraqi tanks were virtually blinded.
Obviously, we'd rather conduct defensive operations at night, taking advantage of our night vision devices, taking advantage of our ability to move undetected and get in behind enemy lines and disrupt their...
This is the guy with the Bart Simpson t-shirt.
The greatest Allied advantage in infantry rides counter-battery fire from Allied artillery. To deal with this threat, the Allied forces had a wide variety of weapons.
Hope you're wearing earmuffs. Sheesh.
The M109 self-propelled 155mm howitzer was the primary weapon of coalition artillery
This is the artillery they were firing.
units. Although it could be outranged by many Iraqi guns, superior fire direction and intelligence more than compensated. Artillery is no longer a contest of gun barrels alone. Targets must be accurately located and identified. The U.S.
Jesus.
The two groups of the French daguet are
The
continuing.
reason why I've been having an increasing interest in stuff like this in the past couple of streams is because I feel like the world is going to be returning to a state of regional lawlessness sometime soon. The Caucasus, parts of the Baltics, Russia, like literally falling apart. I have a feeling that like a general understanding of modern warfare might be useful information. And, the Desert Storm, that is one of the most recent, like major military conflicts that we can learn from. Certainly if you're looking at American, logistics and vehicles.
Continuing their cautious advance north. Group East advance up
Yes,
the main
we're
road towards
entering the
As Salman.
cool zone. Do
Group
not
West
forget.
approach an area of land west of As Salman airfield. At 9:30 a.m., French Gazelles of the 3rd RHC attack a few scattered Iraqi armoured vehicles with anti-tank missiles and fire short bursts of 20mm cannon fire near trenches. Again, the defending Iraqis have no desire to fight, and this is enough for them to surrender. The Gazelles continue to hammer bunkers. A short artillery burst covers the French tanks moving unopposed into the objective. An Iraqi with his arms aloft holds out a surrender leaflet dropped on his troops days earlier, furious that his comrades had to endure an hour of artillery and helicopter attack before being given the opportunity to surrender. Group East encounters a company of Iraqi T-55 tanks. 2 Gazelles and an A-10 batter the column, destroying half of the 15 vehicles, and French tanks roll forward to finish them off. Given the hopelessness of their situation, nearby Iraqi infantry show courage standing up to the French tanks, firing RPGs at close range. However, they are eventually overcome by machine gun fire from the tanks. Group East continue moving north.
I don't even know how much RPGs can do to modern tanks, right? Like, assuming by RPGs they mean like the RPGs, like literally just the grenade from a tube. I don't think those can do anything. Like, you can potentially do something, but I don't think it's like an effective weapon. I mean, if you hit the right place in the tracks, I guess, but I mean, you can kill a person with a spoon, right? Like, obviously, but yeah.
Continuously in Kuwait, the Arab forces of Joint Forces Command East are moving up the coastal road. They're about 12 miles southeast of the northernmost US Marine elements. The commander of Task Force Papa Bear of the 1st Marine Division believes that a series of overground pipelines and sabotage burning oil wells to their east are enough to deter an enemy attack to their flank. They're wrong. Thick morning fog covers the advance of a recon unit of T-55s against Papa Bear's command post. Nobody spots them break through the fog, and the Iraqi tanks open fire into the command post tent. Miraculously, nobody inside is hit.
How?
Chaos erupts as Marines return fire with anti-tank weapons and small arms fire. Had the Iraqis taken advantage of the chaos and continued to press their attack, they could very realistically have overrun the command post. An American corporal bravely charges at the tanks on foot and destroys a T-55 with a shoulder-launched AT-4.
What? Jeez, how the fuck did he run out there with the weight of his giant fucking balls? What the fuck? On open ground?
Run the command post. An American corporal bravely charges at the tanks on foot and destroys a T-55 with a shoulder-launched AT-4. As the fog begins to lift, it's clear that a significant counterattack is in motion. 8 miles north, Iraqi artillery zeroes in on the 1st Marine Division.
Literally, like, yeah, this is like the classic, like, bazooka shit. He literally just fucking ran up there. Okay, yeah, dude, fuck, whatever. Great. Jesus Christ.
Forward command post. likely using radio direction finding equipment to lock onto and home in on the command post radio antennae farm. This post is currently hosting the 1st Marine Division Commander, Major General Mayat. Iraqi BMP armoured personnel carriers open fire through the mist from a tree line to the east. Infantrymen disembark and small arms fire and anti-tank missiles streak into the Marine encampment. The Iraqi force is brigade strength and is now just a few hundred metres away. 7 Marine LAV armoured personnel carriers and 40 infantrymen respond, forming a line and returning fire with small arms and anti-tank missiles.
This is the first engagement that's been even close to like a fair fight. It's still not, but...
And the LAV's 25mm cannon. Realising the seriousness of their situation, the Marines request all available nearby Cobra attack helicopters to beat back the enemy line. The Iraqi troops are too close for Marine artillery support. The first of the responding Cobras scream in and hammer the enemy line with cannon and rocket fire. Seeing the Cobras, Captain Stephen Ray, commanding the LAV platoon, orders an aggressive counterattack against the larger Iraqi force. They roll forward, stopping only to reload their 25mm cannon with fresh belts of 600 rounds. Iraqi gunnery is terrible, and they score no hits on the marauding LAVs. More Cobras arrive to join the Marines lighting up the tree line. The aggressive move forces the enemy to retreat through the woods. Ray continues the pursuit for a kilometre. Satisfied that the majority of the brigade's vehicles have been destroyed, he shows mercy and allows the last of the disarmed fleeing Iraqis to escape. With 38 vehicles destroyed and 3...
I don't know if it's mercy to allow fleeing soldiers to escape. Well, I guess technically fleeing isn't the same as surrendering, right? They could just be fleeing to another position to attack you from. I think it's generally considered bad form to just gun down a ton of people fleeing, which is why... Do you think they're going to cover the highway of death? Oh, did he say unarmed? Oh, in that case, then, like, you have to. We don't want to do any war crimes during Operation Desert Storm, do we? We don't want to do anything wacky, do we? The Highway of Death is a 6-lane highway between Kuwait and Iraq, officially known as Highway 80. The road was used by Iraqi armored divisions for the 1990 invasion of Kuwait. Controversies. Civilian refugees included women and children, family members of pro-Iraqi PLO-aligned Palestinian militants and Kuwaiti collaborators who fled. Shortly before returning, Kuwaiti authorities pressured nearly 200,000 Palestinians to leave Kuwait. Active and former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark argued these attacks violated the Third Geneva Convention. Yeah. More like the highway of cringe. We killed a lot of people. My step-grandfather has footage of himself firing onto the highway? Okay. All right. Death toll from the attack remains unknown. A British journalist, Robert Fisk, said he lost count of the Iraqi corpses crammed into the smoldering wreckage or slumped face down in the sand. Hundreds of corpses strewn up the road all the way to the Iraqi border. Scores of dead soldiers. Bombing starts with other vehicles to escape through the desert. Basically, like, it was like a highway that a lot of people were using, and a lot of them were civilians, and we saw a lot of people, and we went pew-pew. We racked up the points. It was probably bad to do that.
.300 Iraqi prisoners of war, Captain Ray is awarded the Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor for heroism. Task Force Papa Bear have M60 tanks immediately available to hit back against the attacking Iraqi forces, and with the fog lifted, a large tank battle is in progress. Marine jets and Cobras have been scrambled and pound the enemy vehicles, with M60s and LAVs hammering the inferior Iraqi tanks. Particularly fearsome is a flight of 4 Cobras led by Captain Randy Hammond. They form a wide line abreast
Randy Hammond. Okay.
And fly northeast at 20 knots. Each helicopter begins the assault with 4 TOW missiles, 14 rockets, 4 Hellfire missiles, and 720mm cannon rounds. They expend their entire munitions load in just 10 minutes. Over the next couple of hours, the Marines wipe out 2 enemy brigades, including nearly 100 armoured vehicles. The US 1st and 3rd Armoured Divisions are making their way north towards Al-Bashir, sweeping over all resistance. The British 1st Armoured Division is continuing its transition through the safe lanes of the Saddam line. the 1st Cavalry Division advances into Iraq, skirmishing with Iraqi armour on the right flank. At just after midday, 60 Chinooks of the 100th
I'm suddenly disinterested in this. It's been super good, though. You guys should sub. I'll sub. Beep.